Hey, it's Pizza Dude Man, back with more answers to your questions. Our first question today comes from Super Mario Fan 03. Who do you think Sonic has a better relationship with, Sally or Amy? I think the answer is obviously Sally, because that's a real relationship. These are two characters that are in love with each other and have an actual developed relationship, which isn't surprising because Sally comes from the comics, They're able to actually develop and focus on that. The Sonic comics don't have to worry about gameplay or fun or anything like that. They just have to worry about publishing a story. So those kind of character elements are more present than they would be in the games, where Amy is more prominent. And honestly, Sonic and Amy's relationship is really just a fan crush, which, that can work into a relationship, but I don't think it's the same kind of mutual love as there is between Sonic and Sally. I think that's obviously a much better relationship. Tale of the Toaster asks, which stage from Brawl would you have most liked to see in Smash for Wii U that didn't make it in? This is actually a tough one for me because a lot of the stages from Brawl I really liked did make it in. I really like Castle Siege, and that's in, and Delfino Plaza, and that's in. The ones that didn't make it in that I really would have liked would have to be the Summit, which I guess makes sense since Ice Climbers aren't playable anymore, boo-hoo, and Newport City. I was really hoping that after they had Lucas, they would re-include Newport City, but they didn't. Musomania asks, do you think Mario has gotten stale over the years? What ideas do you have to freshen up the series? That's a very interesting question. For me, video games have less of a chance of becoming stale over time when compared to movies, just because, when you have a new generation of kids, you can always show them the same old movie over and over and over again, and for the most part, it's going to be the same kind of experience as when the movie first came out. I mean, sometimes, you do reboots or remakes or new sequels or stuff, but with video games, there's so many advancements to, gameplay and controls and graphics and story that I really don't mind the rehashing of Mario, because A, it's appealing to the new audience that hasn't experienced Mario before, and B, I think they do enough to keep it fresh. They always have new power-ups, so new abilities Mario's never had before. Sometimes they'll do little gameplay changes here and there, but the other thing is they do a very good job of changing the environment enough each time. It has a very good balance of familiarity versus new stuff, to the point where I don't think I've ever been bored by a new Mario game. Just gone oh yeah, this is the exact same thing as before. Maybe with the exception of the later New Super Mario Brothers games. I felt okay, it's just New Super Mario Brothers again. But I can't say that I found Mario getting stale over the years. That is totally just my opinion there. I'm sure there are plenty of people who do find it getting stale. I'm just not there. Lord Genesect asks, what are your honest thoughts on the Pac-Land stage in Super Smash Bros.? Honestly, I think the Pac-Land stage, it doesn't really do it for me. I'm not a big fan of it. I like some of those referential stages. I really like, Balloon Fight as a stage, and Duck Hunt as a stage is okay, but the Pac-Land one is just so out there for me. I don't know why. I'm just not a big fan of it. I really like the maze stage for the 3DS Smash Brothers, but the one for the Wii U is just, I think it's kind of tacky. That's just me again. The Smashmaster 9000 asks, if there was an Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo fighting game, what would you name it, and what characters would you put in it? The first name that came to mind was Console Wars. I don't know if that's a good name or not. As for what characters I would put in it, that's tricky for me because I would guess that you want to have as much even representation as possible, but there are, anyway, for me anyway, A, I believe there are way more Nintendo characters that are more iconic and more well-known, and B, I simply don't know as many PlayStation and Xbox characters. I mean, I'm just imagining you would have, some of the top characters from Nintendo games. Probably, you're kind of looking at the original roster of Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 64, plus some additional guys like Marth, along with some of the cast from PlayStation All-Stars, along with whatever Xbox has got. What do they have? They have Master Chief for Halo and lots of third-party stuff. I couldn't really even tell you what Xbox even owns. I guess you could include Rare stuff if they care enough about that. I don't think I'm going to get into the real nitty-gritty of like each specific character I would pick for this one. Ridley Crade 187 asks, Cheetos or Doritos? For me, Doritos. Big Boss Man 538 asks, thoughts on the chances of these characters returning? Roy, Lucas, Cloud, Dark Pit, and Bayonetta. Roy, I would find unlikely as a starting character. He would probably be a DLC character again. That's just my thoughts on that. Lucas, I would probably say the same thing, unless, they have some big promotional thing, like an international release of Mother 3, then I don't see why Lucas's position now would change from then when he was a DLC character. Cloud is tricky. It depends on if they're really gonna, cooperate with Square Enix on that right off the bat. That one's kind of a gray area for me because that goes much more into the business than the speculation side. Dark Pit, I'd be very surprised if he returned unless, once again, he was a last-minute clone. Maybe they would even bring him back as a DLC character with a more unique moveset. That'd be kind of cool. Bayonetta I actually find incredibly likely to rejoin, because unlike Cloud, Bayonetta has a much stronger tie to Nintendo stuff, and she was this fan-voted-in character, so I think there's a lot of interest in keeping her around. Bobby Lopez asks, I think Sakurai wants the third-party characters to have a worldwide popularity. What are your thoughts? I think there's a logic to that, but I don't think it has to be a restriction. For instance, if I remember correctly, when Little Mac, even though he's not third party, when Little Mac was announced for the newest Smash Bros. Game, there were a lot of Japanese fans who were like, really? The boxer from Punch-Out? Was he that iconic? And they pretty much had to be pointed out that Punch-Out and Little Mac had a much bigger influence in the Western audience. So I think there is something to be said there. But yeah, I see what you're coming from. Gene Nelson asks, what would be your reaction if Disney bought Nintendo? How do you think this would change Smash? I think in a lot of ways, it wouldn't change Smash terribly, because Disney's been pretty good with its newer acquisitions like Star Wars and Marvel, into not pushing themselves onto it. You know what I mean? They're pretty good about letting those companies do what they do and just providing the funding for it. Now, if anything, if you're asking about, if there would be a Disney character in Super Smash Bros., I think the biggest possibility there, following our regular guidelines, is that it's gotta be a character who originated as a video game character. So I think the most obvious pick there would be Sora. Is Sora owned by Disney or is he owned by Square Enix? Who knows? Who cares? Disney buys Nintendo. It makes as much sense as anything else. Smash Bros. 2009 asks, which path in Fates do you like the most and why? Fire Emblem, Conquest, Birthright, or Revelations? My favorite, ultimately, and I'll get to the reasoning in just a sec here, my favorite, ultimately, is Birthright. So between Birthright and Conquest, Birthright plays more like Awakening, and Conquest plays more like a traditional Fire Emblem game. Now, Awakening was the first Fire Emblem game that I played through all the way, so I think there is something about that style I like more. Because, I don't know, it seems much more character-driven to me, and for me, that's more interesting. It's still a good, well-laid-out strategy game, but with an emphasis on the characters that build up your army, and that interests me more. Conquest is much more strategically inclined, which is awesome if you're looking for a challenge, but terrible if you're looking just have a relaxing, fun time. I do get enjoyment out of playing Conquest, but I have to be in the mood for it. I never just I think I'll play Conquest today, because I have to give my all to beat each and every chapter of Conquest. It is really hard. Whereas Birthright, I can just kind of relax and be I'm gonna hook these two characters up and go slaughter the foes on the left side of the map with them. So, you know, for me, when I'm playing these handheld games like Fire Emblem, that's kind of more my relaxing passing time when I'm not recording the console stuff, because most of the console stuff I do these days all goes up on the YouTube channel. So the only thing I use as a relaxant a lot of the times is the handheld stuff, and Birthright's much more relaxing. Additionally, I've always had a much bigger fascination with medieval Japan than medieval Europe, so I really like the classes and weapons and armor of Birthright more than Nor. So there's that too. As for Revelations, Revelations is way too happy. It's like, we don't have to make any big decisions because there's a third path where we can make peace because there's a third enemy. That's what ruins it for me. If it was that you actually have two warring countries and you're finding a way to bring them to peace, that'd be kind of cool. But they make up this whole plot line where there's a third higher entity that's actually causing the other two to fight. So neither side is wrong, and there is no conflict, and everyone can join forces and be happy and live and take down the third evil force. That's boring to me. That's boring to me. It's like they're copping out. They're making up this story, this third entity, which I know was built up in the other two stories, but it still seems like a cop-out. It's like, oh, you can have all the characters join your army now because there was actually a third evil entity all along. I think from a story writing perspective, it's the Revelations is boring. Waffles the Apprentice asks, if you could be a gym leader in Pokemon, what type would you specialize in? What would your team be? And what would you call your badge? Ooh, I would definitely be a fighting type gym leader. Let's say my endgame team consists of Blaziken, Lucario, Chestnut, Gallade, Hawlucha, and Pangoro. That's my fighting team. And I'd call the badge the Bruiser Badge. Ultra Caden asks, what moveset, Final Smash, Victory Theme Stage, and Codec call would you give Chewbacca? Well, Chewbacca's already been in a fighting game. There was an arcade Star Wars fighting game, so his moveset could be derivative of that, with his Final Smash being a Wookiee raid inspired by King Dedede's previous Final Smash. His victory theme could be like some excerpt from Star Wars, and he could just have like, oh, this is the generic Star Wars emblem, just in case they add other Star Wars characters in the future, and it could just be like a part of the main theme, something like something like that. The stage could be, once again, just like a generic Star Wars stage. I think Death Star would be good. And I think the codec call should be something kind of like the Mario one, where it's like Snake is already well aware of the character. It could be like Snake and Otakon and be like, Otakon, it's that furry monster from Star Wars. His name is Chewbacca, Snake. Chewbacca is a Wookiee from Kashyyyk, and they're really powerful and shit. Something like that. The McKee channel asks, want a chance to win a shout-out? I have a big channel and it's growing fast. No pressure, just tell me what you think. I mean, sure. I have no problems with you giving me a shout-out. Does this count as me shouting out you since I said your name? Is that how this works? Are we shouting each other out? I don't know. We have time for just maybe a couple extra questions today, so here's another one from Ridley Craig 187. Ruby, opinions, least favorite character, and favorite weapon. Well, I really enjoy Ruby. I think it's very great, very creative, obviously derivative of a lot of other fictional media, but I mean, everything is, and as far as that goes, it's still really awesome. My least favorite character is probably Cardin's cronies. Like, Cardin, even if it's not very much, they at least flesh him out a bit as a character, but his three bros are just his three bros. Like, what's their story? They're just dumbasses who follow the dumbass. My favorite weapon, which you might not have reached this point, is Flint Cole's trumpet, because I'm a trumpet player and I feel obligated to pick that. Last question, really quick, let's squeeze this in. From Smash Brothers 2009, have you ever attempted Lunatic Plus in Awakening? The answer is no. I beat Lunatic in Awakening, and that was enough for me. And that's all the time we have today. Comment your new questions below, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.